They tried to delete the evidence, but the internet never forgets. Section 1. Let's be honest, nobody actually thought Power Legacy was going to hit this hard before it even premiered. Like, we're still processing the end of Force, still grieving Diamond, still replaying that Tariq rescue scene on loop, and now the universe is out here dropping bombshells like it's nothing. And the wildest part, we're not even at the beginning yet. Power Legacy hasn't even started, and it's already the most talked about chapter in the entire franchise. That tells you everything, but let's slow down and actually break this down properly, because there's a lot happening, and if you blink, you'll miss something important. And trust me, you don't want to miss any of this. First, let's talk about where Force left us, because that ending was not subtle. Tommy Egan spent an entire season at war. No rest, no peace, just back-to-back enemies and back-to-back problems. Ortega, Che, Jennard, King Kilo's crew, all of them standing between Tommy and full control of Chicago. And one by one, he handled it. That's just who Tommy is. He doesn't negotiate until he's already won. But even with all of that, the thing that had everyone holding their breath wasn't the street war. It was Mia and the baby. Because suddenly, Tommy Egan, the most reckless and fearless man in the entire Power universe, had something real to lose. And that changed everything about how we watched him move this season. Think about that for a second. This is the same man who has walked into rooms full of people who wanted him dead and walked back out without flinching. But a pregnant woman by his side, that's the one thing that made Tommy actually look vulnerable. And the show knew exactly what it was doing by putting that pressure on him. Because now Tommy's not just fighting for power or money or control, he's fighting for a future. A real one, and that's a version of Tommy Egan we have never seen before, and honestly, it's the most dangerous version too, because a man protecting his family will do things that even his enemies aren't prepared for. And then, just when the season felt like it couldn't deliver anything bigger, it did. That phone call from the end of Power Book 2 Ghost, the one that felt like a loose thread for years, suddenly got its answer. Tariq showing up to save Tommy wasn't just a fan moment, it was a full circle moment for the entire franchise. Two characters who have been connected since the very beginning, through Ghost, through loyalty, through blood and betrayal, finally standing on the same side. And the internet absolutely lost it, as it should have. Because that scene wasn't just good television, it was a reminder that this universe is still capable of delivering moments that genuinely shock you. But here's the thing, that reunion, as iconic as it was, isn't even the biggest story heading into Power Legacy, not by a long shot. Because while everyone was celebrating Tommy and Tariq finally linking up, something else was quietly happening in the background. Something that the people behind this franchise tried very hard to keep quiet, and they almost succeeded. Almost. So the question is, what exactly did they not want us to see? And why did they move so fast to make sure we couldn't? Here's where things get really interesting. And by interesting, I mean the kind of interesting that makes you sit up straight and rewatch a 30-second clip 15 times just to make sure you actually saw what you think you saw. Because what happened with the Power Book 4 Force Season 3, Episode 10 cast list wasn't just a slip. It wasn't a technical glitch. It wasn't some random database error. It was a confirmation, a real, undeniable, accidentally on purpose confirmation that the Power universe is about to do something that nobody was fully prepared for. And the fact that they deleted it so fast actually tells you more than the listing itself ever could. Because you don't panic delete something that doesn't matter. You only scrub something from the internet in a hurry when it's revealing something you're not ready for the world to know yet. And what was listed there, clear as day, before it vanished into thin air, was Omari Hardwick, Ghost, the man who supposedly died on that courthouse steps in front of his own son. The man whose death was supposed to be the emotional foundation that every single Power spinoff was built on. That man was listed in the cast, and then he wasn't. And we're all just supposed to act normal. Let's talk about why this matters so much. Because some people are out here trying to wave it off like it's nothing. Like it was just a mistake. Like, these things happen all the time, but here's what those people are conveniently forgetting. The Power universe doesn't make those kinds of mistakes. This is a franchise that has been carefully, almost obsessively controlled from the very beginning. 50 Cent has his hands on every major decision. Every casting choice, every plot direction, every spin-off announcement, none of it happens without intention. So when a name like Omari Hardwick shows up in an official cast listing for a season finale episode and then disappears within minutes, that's not an accident. That's a leak. And leaks in this franchise have a history of turning out to be true every single time. And it's not just the cast listing either, because if you've been paying attention, the signs have been there for a while now. Omari Hardwick himself has not been quiet about how he felt about Ghost's ending. He has said openly in multiple interviews that he wasn't satisfied with how his character's story concluded, that he felt Ghost deserved more, that there was more story to tell. Now, actors say things like that all the time and it never goes anywhere. But Omari didn't just say it once and move on. He kept coming back to it. He kept leaving the door open in a way that felt specific, felt intentional, like a man who already knew something the rest of us didn't. And now, with his name showing up in that cast list, even briefly, it's starting to feel less like wishful thinking and a lot more like a planned return that got revealed ahead of schedule. But let's go even deeper, because the return of Ghost isn't just a fan service moment. If it actually happens, it completely rewrites the emotional stakes of Power Legacy in a way that nothing else could. Think about what it means for every character involved. For Tommy, Ghost coming back isn't just complicated, it's a full identity crisis. Because Tommy has been operating in a world where his best friend is dead, where the grief of losing Ghost has quietly shaped every decision he's made since the original series ended. Tommy doesn't talk about it, he never would. But that loss has been sitting underneath everything. And now, imagine Ghost walking back into his life in New York in the middle of Tommy trying to build something new. That's not a reunion, that's a collision. And depending on why Ghost is back and what he wants, it could destroy everything Tommy has been working toward. And then there's Tariq. Because if Ghost returns, the Tariq situation becomes something else entirely. This is a young man who watched his father get shot on those courthouse steps, who has been carrying the weight of that moment, the guilt, the grief, the complicated love and resentment that comes with losing a parent who was never fully honest with you. Tariq has spent every episode of Ghost trying to become his own man, separate from his father's shadow. And just when he finally starts to step into his own, just when he shows up to save his Uncle Tommy like the man he's becoming, Ghost potentially walks back in. And all of that growth, all of that distance Tariq has fought to create gets tested in the most brutal way possible, because you can prepare yourself for a lot of things in life, but you cannot prepare yourself for a dead man walking back through the door. And here's the part that nobody is really talking about yet. If Ghost is back, what side is he on? Because the easy assumption is that he comes back and somehow reconciles with Tommy and Tariq, and they all find a way forward together. But that's not the Power universe. That's not how this franchise operates. This is a show that has always been more interested in the ways that love and loyalty can become weapons than in clean, comfortable reunions. So if Ghost is really returning, the more likely scenario isn't a warm homecoming. It's something much darker, something that forces every character around him to choose. And the most dangerous version of that story, the one that would genuinely shake the entire franchise to its core, is Ghost coming back not as an ally, not as a redeemed man, but as the thing everyone feared he always was, underneath the suits and the charm and the love for his family. The villain. The real one. The one that was always there. And if that's where Power Legacy is actually going, then everything we thought we knew about this universe just became a starting point, not a conclusion. But before we even get to Legacy, there's something else that just got confirmed. Something that's going to make the wait feel even longer and even more worth it at the same time. And once you hear it, you'll understand exactly why the Power universe is operating differently now than it ever has before. So here's something that a lot of people are sleeping on right now, and I genuinely don't understand why, because once you actually sit with it, it changes the entire conversation around Power Legacy and what this franchise is building toward. 50 Cent confirmed that before Power Legacy even gets its premiere date, we are getting Power Origins first, a full prequel series, Young Ghost, Young Tommy, the beginning of everything, and on the surface, that sounds like a simple scheduling announcement. like a nice little appetizer before the main course. But it's actually so much bigger than that, because Power Origins isn't just filler content to keep fans busy while Legacy gets finished. It's a deliberate, calculated move that is going to completely reframe how we understand every single thing that happens in Power Legacy. And when you realize that, the whole timeline starts to feel less like a wait and more like a setup, a very long, very intentional setup. Think about what Power Origins actually means for the people who have been watching this franchise from the beginning. We already know how the story ends for Ghost and Tommy in their prime. We've watched it, we've lived it, we've grieved it, but what we have never seen is where it all started. The first time these two men decided that the streets were their future, the moment the friendship became something unbreakable, the early mistakes, the early wins, the versions of Ghost and Tommy that existed before the weight of everything they would eventually do settled onto their shoulders. That's the story Origins is going to tell. And here's why that matters so much heading into Legacy. Because when you watch young Ghost make his first real choice, when you see the exact moment he decided who he was going to be, and then you cut to Power Legacy, where that same man might be walking back into the story as a villain, the emotional impact of that hits completely differently. It's not just shock value anymore, it becomes the full arc, the complete picture, and that's storytelling at a level that this franchise has honestly never attempted before. But let's be real about something. The timing of Origins also does something very specific for the Ghost return theory, because if Omari Hardwick really is coming back in Power Legacy, then Power Origins serves as the perfect reintroduction of that character to a whole new audience. Think about it. New viewers who never watched the original Power series will meet Ghost for the first time in Origins. They'll watch his whole origin story, understand who he is, understand what he means to Tommy, understand the legacy he built and the lies he told and the love he was capable of. And then when Legacy arrives and Ghost potentially walks back in, those new viewers aren't confused, they're invested. They already have a relationship with this character, they already care, and that makes his return, if it happens, land 10 times harder for every single person watching, whether they've been in the franchise since day one or just discovered it through Origins. And for the longtime fans, Origins is going to do something equally powerful but in a completely different way. Because we already know the ending, we already know what Ghost becomes, what he loses, what he destroys, what he dies for, or maybe doesn't die for, depending on what Power Legacy ends up revealing. So watching young Ghost in Origins isn't going to feel like a simple nostalgia trip. It's going to feel like watching a tragedy unfold in slow motion. Like knowing the last page of a book before you read the first chapter. Every good decision young Ghost makes, you'll be watching through the lens of who he eventually becomes. Every time he chooses loyalty, you'll know how that loyalty eventually fractures. Every time he smiles, you'll feel the weight of what's coming. And that kind of dramatic irony, that gap between what the character knows and what the audience knows, is one of the most powerful tools in storytelling. And the Power universe is about to use it in a way that is going to genuinely hurt in the best possible way. Now let's talk about the New York confirmation, because that detail is doing a lot of heavy lifting for Power Legacy that people aren't fully appreciating yet. When 50 Cent first started teasing the next chapter, there was real speculation that the franchise was going international, moving overseas, taking Tommy or Tariq or both of them into completely unfamiliar territory with new cities, new cultures, new criminal landscapes, and honestly that sounded exciting, it sounded fresh. But then the confirmation came that Power Legacy is going back to New York, and some people were disappointed by that. Like, it was the safe choice, the comfortable choice, but those people are thinking about it completely wrong. Because bringing the story back to New York isn't retreating to familiar ground. It's returning to the scene of the crime. Literally. New York is what? Let's get into the real conversation, the one that nobody is quite saying out loud yet, but everybody is thinking. Because when you strip away all the excitement and the theories and the confirmed details and the deleted cast listings, there's one question sitting at the center of everything Power Legacy is building toward. And that question isn't about Ghost. It isn't about Tommy. It isn't even about the new city or the new enemies or the new criminal landscape they're all about to walk into. The real question is about legacy itself, about what it actually means to inherit a world that was built on lies, blood, and brilliant, catastrophic ambition. And the person that question lands on hardest, the person who is quietly becoming the most important figure in this entire next chapter, is Tariq St. Patrick. Because Power Legacy, when you really look at it, when you follow every thread back to where it started, is ultimately Tariq's story. And the sooner people accept that, the sooner everything else about this franchise starts to make perfect sense. Think about where Tariq is right now as a character. He started Power Book 2 Ghost as a college student trying to survive. A kid who knew too much, had too little, and was forced to make decisions that no teenager should ever have to make. And season by season, episode by episode, he grew. He learned, he made mistakes that cost people their lives, and he carried those mistakes without ever fully breaking. He built a drug operation out of necessity, then out of ambition, then out of something that started to look uncomfortably like his father. And that evolution, that slow, painful transformation from Ghost Son into his own kind of dangerous, has been the backbone of everything the Power universe has done since the original series ended. But now, heading into Legacy, Tariq isn't a college kid anymore. He's not surviving. He's arriving. He showed up in Chicago and rescued Tommy Egan, the most self-sufficient, most feared man in the entire franchise, without being asked and without hesitation. And that moment wasn't just emotionally satisfying, it was a coronation. A signal to everyone watching that Tariq St. Patrick has finally stepped into the full version of who he's been becoming this entire time. But here's where it gets complicated. And in the Power universe, it always gets complicated because Tariq stepping into his power at exactly the same moment that Ghost might be stepping back into the picture isn't a coincidence. It's a collision course. And the emotional complexity of that collision is something that this franchise has never actually had to deal with before, because Ghost has always been present in this story as a ghost, pun absolutely intended, as a memory, as a shadow, as the standard that Tariq has been running from